Shalom Aleichem, welcome one, welcome all. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. As today, on the auspicious day of Chaf, we are celebrating the Siyum Harambam of Sefer Kedusha, and entering Sefer Haflah. Thank you everyone for joining us, those who are on YouTube, on Facebook, those who are joining us on Chabad.org live stream. Welcome one, welcome all. And we are honored to have with us a guest who we almost got to have last time. But God was Mesavev Sibois in his infinite wisdom. He wanted Rabbi Barber to be on as we're Messiah, as we are concluding Sefer Kedusha, as his expertise is, one of his many expertises, I should say, is Kedusha is the go-to rabbi when rabbis around the world need to investigate and find someone to make sure that there's no Isurei Bia, to make sure that there's Yuchsin proper. So a rabbi's rabbi, Rabbi Barber, here with us on the ground, not landing on a plane. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. I must say, after that introduction, it's one that my late father would have enjoyed hearing and my mother would actually believe. But thank you. It's great being here to celebrate the Siyum with everyone together.
Thank you, thank you. So you are known among many things as an address that people turn to when they're officiating at a wedding and they want to assess and ensure that the yuchsin, that there's proper pedigree. Could you give us a little bit of a background of how this happened? How did your journey take you into this area of life? And maybe we'll talk about some of the interesting intricacies in the modern world, talking about a very big chunk of this book is Isurei Bia, to ensure that marriages are done, Kedas Moshe Yisrael.
Okay. So it's interesting, people obviously will ask a question, why do I have to prove that I'm Jewish? If I say I'm Jewish, which is fair enough. And in fact, the Gemara in Sefer Perokim tells us about this individual who boasted the fact that he somehow connivingly presented himself as a Jew and was able to eat from the Korban Pesach. And so the rabbis want to suggest that simply saying that you're Jewish would be sufficient. And there's a great discussion, which we'll come to in a moment. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. And there is a need both to verify somebody's Jewishness and also, which fits into the laws of Isurei Bia, just because somebody's Jewish doesn't therefore automatically mean that they can get married or get married to the particular person they want to get married to. So I originally was a member of the Melbourne Beis Din, and as such, my paperwork is accepted by the Israeli rabbinate, and I carry that with me now that I've been for the last 7 years living in the United States. And I would say that I do the most Yahadus in America, to the extent I recently took on a magnificent manager or secretary, call it what you may, and she does now most of the background work, and she then presents it to me, and then I will verify based on information that people have presented. I sort of say it's like you want to get a bank account, you need to have 100 points. Similarly, over here, you need to have a certain amount of points, to verify your Jewishness. I mean, the question is, why isn't it sufficient if somebody says they're Jewish to believe them? And the answer is that in a perfect world, perhaps we could. The problem is nowadays, many people don't know what it means when they say that I'm Jewish. Many could believe, well, my father's Jewish, that means I'm Jewish. Also, we need to recognize that we're living in a time, but I don't think the Jewish people have ever experienced since the time of Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, even though there is a tremendous rise of anti-Semitism. But the Jewish people on a whole have never had it so good. While 100 years ago, who would want to convert to Judaism? Nowadays, many people want to convert to Judaism. 100 years ago, who would want to marry somebody who was Jewish or somebody who was Jewish? The possibility of marrying out of the faith was very, very minuscule. Unfortunately, today, assimilation is right. And many people want their partner to convert. And many conversions are unfortunately not accepted by the Orthodox community. And as such, somebody could say that they're Jewish, but after further investigation, not necessarily are they Jewish. For example, on 2 occasions, I had women who became more religious, and they had adopted a child. And the child they adopted was not Jewish, but they thought simply bringing the child up in their home, sending them to a Jewish day school means the child was Jewish, when in fact the child was not Jewish. And it was only when they started to learn the laws did they realize, well, wait a minute, my child's not Jewish yet. So these are some of the reasons why it's necessary to ensure that the person who wants to get married, firstly, is Jewish. The next stage that we would need to verify is, are they suitable to marry the person in question? For example, if somebody's a Cohen, we have to make sure that the woman he's getting married to, she hasn't been divorced before. Likewise, 2 people getting married, if they've been married before, and I've had this, oh, I didn't know I needed a get. I didn't know I needed a divorce from my first marriage to get married again. So we have to make sure there's a divorce in place. And then, of course, there is a tragic question which can come up, and that is mamzerut, to ensure that there is no issues there. So in a nutshell, that's sort of like some of the challenges that we face today when couple come to get married.
So we've all just finished learning Sefer Kedusha. We've learned through all the details of these laws. First of all, is there a concept of kivan shenitma nitma, meaning is there a certain point at which you say, you're acting Jewish for a while, you've been Jewish, is Eliyahu really going to go ahead and tell us, hey, Rabbi Barber didn't do a good job, and 5 generations back there's a problem? We all had heard the famous story this year of the frum lady who got married, and then they found out that he was really not Jewish, and that caused a huge turmoil in the Jewish community. Can things get past you?
Listen, we're only human. But I think, Baruch Hashem, because I've been involved in this for so long, I can usually pick up discrepancies. What I find is when people are really pushing and adamant, you can sometimes tell there's a bit of an issue. If I could just share an example, well, of course, without getting into detail, a particular lady rang me. She needs a letter for her son. Her son's getting married in Israel. I said, when do you need the letter? Yesterday. That's already a bit of a red flag. Okay, so all I need that you should prove to me that you're Jewish. Well, she says, I don't have any documentation. And she says, I want you, she's being honest. She said, I was married once before to a Jewish man, but we just got married civilly. And then I did marry my second husband, and we got married a Jewish ceremony. It wasn't a religious one, but there was a Jewish ceremony. And it's the child from the second marriage that I need a letter for. So I said, okay, but I need to prove that you're Jewish. So she tells me, well, what I can do is my uncle, who lives in Israel, my mother's brother, got married in Israel. I said, well, that's great. What we need is your uncle, please present your uncle's wedding certificate, marriage certificate. Then I need to prove that your mother and your uncle are brother and sister. So present to me both of their either birth certificates or death certificates so I can link them back together. And once I do that, so I know that your mother's Jewish, so therefore you're Jewish, and therefore your son is Jewish, which is wonderful. Anyway, I get the wedding certificate, I get the 2 birth certificates, and the problem is the 2 birth certificates, the name of the grandmother, which in this case would be the grandmother, in one it says her name is Leah, for example, and the other one said her name is Sarah. And I said, well, there's a bit of a problem over here. Either it's Sarah or Leah. So the lady says, well, sometimes she's Sarah, sometimes she's Leah. I said, that's great, but I need a document saying that Sarah and Leah are the same person. And she calls me back a few days later. She has no documentation. She can't prove that Sarah and Leah are the same person. But then she tells me you know what I can do? I can give you my first wedding, my first marriage was by the Israeli rabbinate. Do you want that? I said, that's wonderful. Of course I do. Of course, that's major red flag. She sends it in to me. And she indeed was married by the rabbinate. So I call her and I say, look, I don't understand. Why did you have to send me your uncle's certificate that he got married by the Israeli rabbinate when you could have sent me your certificate that you got married by the Israeli rabbinate? Of course, you're Jewish because you were married by the Israeli rabbinate, and therefore your son is Jewish. The only reason why perhaps you didn't want to do that is because on your wedding certificate, it says that your husband's name, let's say, is Moshe Cohen. And on your son's birth certificate, it says the father's name is David Friedman, for example. In other words, the bottom line is what happened was she did get married once before, but unlike that you told me that it was a civil marriage, she actually got married Orthodox. And she never received a get from her first husband. She then moved on from her first husband and is now married to a second man and had a, well, perhaps her child is from the second man. Now, that is a question, then a serious question of mamzerut, which we learned in Hilchos Isurei Bia. Such an individual can never get married. So this is, of course, you know, the rabbis will do whatever they can to try and deal with such issues. I did write a response sent to the Beth Din of Bat Yam, because that's where the couple were getting married. The Beth Din of Bat Yam then has sent it to a higher court in the Beth Din in Tel Aviv. And we're now waiting on a response. Really is not the time, but there are many halachic issues that perhaps we could present that could mitigate the situation and perhaps allow the person to marry.
Okay, so that's one scenario, and the famous question of civil marriage being halachically recognized. Is there a difference between living in a Jewish community where there's perhaps witnesses seeing them as living in husband and wife? Do we apply the concept that man and woman would not live together not for the purpose of marriage? Do we apply that to people who are not observant of Torah and mitzvahs? So do you have a specific way that you deal with these issues?
Well, we were blessed that one of the greatest rabbis of our times, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, he came out with a very strong ruling, which basically has prevented the issue of question mamzerut throughout the Western world and in Israel itself. And that is a couple who did not have an Orthodox wedding. They were married either Reform or Conservative, and definitely if they had no marriage ceremony at all, we view that as not being in a marriage. So when the woman will eventually, please God, stand under the chuppah and have an Orthodox wedding, that will be considered her first wedding.
Is that leniency taken by, meaning, would you're talking to an audience here who's studying 3 Perokim of Rambam a day? It's not a beginner.
Right.
Is this something that you as in this position would say, if it's my daughter, to say, go marry that person? I'm telling you with absolute certainty, it's accepted universally that person is not a mamzer and that first marriage is dissolved because it wasn't done according to Halacha?
So what we would say is as follows. Rabbi Moshe also says this, that l'katchila, we will try and encourage the couple, the man for the woman to seek a divorce, to get a get.
But the child's already born at the second marriage.
Oh, so then there's no shiloh. Then it's not a question at all. Not a problem. No shiloh in the slightest.
And you say you say that even to an
we accept, yes, 100%.
You would have your child marry that person.
100%, not a problem. No shiloh at all. There is a famous story of Rabbi Moshe. The Rabbi Moshe was being Masada Kedushin under the chuppah, and the mother of the bride or the groom whispered in his ear, and she said that the child is not from my husband. The child is from a man who I had an affair with. this was said to Rav Moshe under the chuppah. So the story goes. Rav Moshe, quick as a flash, responded, and he said, it's not an issue because the mother, we don't believe the mother when she said that she had an affair with another man. And therefore we will assume that and we accept, not just assume, we accept that the father is her true husband. So if that's the halacha, that's how we follow. There was, of course, Rav Henkin, who was also from the east side. He was a posek really of America before Rav Moshe came. He was very opposed to what Rav Moshe said, and but the whole Jewish world has accepted the Israeli rabbinate. Everyone has accepted Rav Moshe's opinion. Yeah,
very nice.
And that's yeah.
Okay, well, before we actually go to the actual Siyum, which we're a day late, but the actual Siyum, is there any other anecdote, story from the front lines of investigatory research and coming up with, is any perhaps another final anecdote that you can share with us before we can conclude with the Siyum?
One of the challenges that people we have is when it comes to adoption. And we had a very, very, I would say, we'll call it a scary story, where a man was getting married for not the first time. And the first and second time he'd been married Orthodox by very prestigious rabbis. But somehow it slipped through the cracks that none of them realized that his mother had been adopted. And the question was, well, the mother was adopted. Did she convert? Was she born Jewish? What exactly is the status? And there's an interesting response just that people should be aware of. The Rav Moshe said that, especially going back, that a child born out of wedlock, the mother would very much want the child to be brought up in a Jewish home because she knew the child would be well looked after. And so the fact, and therefore they would say, I'm Jewish, so the child will go to a Jewish home. So that in itself is not sufficient. And we had a real serious issue because this fellow had a sister who was married Orthodox, had a very large family, and all of them were Orthodox, and all coming back to this mother who we didn't know if she was Jewish or not. So, because no one knew that she'd been adopted. Somehow I found out that she was adopted. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we discovered, somehow we managed to find out who the biological parents were of this woman. We then did research on them and we found out that indeed they were Jewish.
Oh, wow.
So therefore, she was in fact born Jewish, and therefore everything worked out well. Otherwise, we would have had a major issue over here. So one can never be too careful when it comes to these things. And therefore, I really encourage people, unless you're an expert in this field, to give it over to people who deal with this. It doesn't have to be myself. People who deal with this on a daily basis, to ensure that the people you're marrying are indeed Jewish. Yeah.
And so on that note, how can people, if they want to reach you, if they want to be able to use your services, what's the easiest way to be able to do that?
But the easiest way would be to send an email to my secretary. Her name's Dahlia. She's great. To info Rabbi Barber, info Rabbi Barber BARBER @gmail.com. Say you want to verify your Jewishness or you want to get married, and we'll take it from there. And very user friendly. If you're worried that my person, I don't like speaking to rabbis, so I made sure the face is, well, not the face of a rabbi, but somebody that really understands and connects to the people. Yeah.
Would you say that nowadays, as I'll say, as a shliach, someone who's involved in, as all shluchim are involved in marrying people, that really you'd have to, even basic things like when people say that this is my mother, you really you ask for licenses and birth certificates, even for very basic things?
No, I'm not quite sure of the question, but the Rambam does write, Ma'ila Asa B'Yuchsin, that when it came to marriage, Rambam said we need to be a little bit more careful, even though, and therefore we perhaps shouldn't believe the person simply because he says they're Jewish, even though there's a tshuva from the Rambam who negates that. But if somebody turns up and he says they're Jewish, so, depends on the situation, perhaps he could accept just they're Jewish, but you should really investigate. And I honestly believe, I told Shluchim, the longer you delay doing the investigation, the more challenging it's going to be. You gave my daughter a bas mitzvah, now she's getting married. Well, why did you give her a bas mitzvah if you're not sure she's Jewish? Well, you gave my son a bar mitzvah, now he's getting married. I don't understand. Why did you embrace us as part of your congregation, part of your community? And now you question whether we're Jewish or not. So that's one of the benefits of sending it out to a third party like myself. The shliach says, look, it's not really up to me. It has to go to head office. And that's where it's going to be verified. It's really out of my control. And unfortunately, I've had that where I've had to write back, and I put it on the Rabbinate of Israel. I say our standards is going to be like the Rabbinate of Israel. If the Rabbinate of Israel accepts this conversion, for example, then we can identify as being Jewish. But if they don't, then unfortunately we cannot. So that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Rabbi Barber. And now if you'll honor us, if we can ask the moderator, we're going to put on the very final halacha of Sefer.
That would be great.
And we'll put it on the screen, and we're now going to conclude Sefer Kedusha. Here we go.
Okay, it's not on the screen yet. Hopefully,
yes,
it'll
you're there.
Come up. Okay,
right
here we go. So the last halacha is a very fascinating one, and that is most of us don't have the opportunity to fulfill this mitzvah, except when it's kaparos. And but the theme that he wants to bring out here is that we should not be mavaza a mitzvah. In other words, so disrespect to the mitzvah, not so much because of the mitzvah, but rather because of the Eibishter, the one who commanded us with this mitzvah. Therefore, that one shouldn't cover the blood with the sawdust or whatever it is with one's foot, but rather with one's hand, or with a knife, or a vessel, anything that shows respect. The mitzvahs bezuyas all, because otherwise if you do it with your leg, it's sort of like, you don't give it much, if you hear noise in the background, it's because I'm at a bar mitzvah. At least it's better than it's coming off an airplane. Because really we're honoring the one who commanded us with the mitzvah. And the Eibishter, by giving us all these mitzvahs, he ensured that we were able to make our way through the darkness. He's given us light to straighten the crooked paths. And he's given us light to ensure that we walk and we are able to decide things in the correct path. The Chaynu Oimer, and concludes with from the pasuk of Tilim, Ner lo ragli dvarecha. We thank Hashem that His words of Torah, they are a light to my feet. In other words, like a flashlight, we know where we're going. It's like a light to our paths that we see. So we conclude by sort of thanking Hashem that He's given us all of these mitzvahs, not as a burden of us for Torah, but mitzvahs that give us life, give us direction, give us meaning, give us purpose. And therefore, we should not desecrate the mitzvahs.
And if I could finish as, he is a Jewish guy, so Viktor Frankl said, everyone wants to be happy. He said, the pursuit of happiness won't bring you happiness, but if one pursues purpose and meaning, that will bring you happiness. That's what we're saying over here. Torah is a light. Torah gives us direction. Torah gives us purpose. And then we follow the ways of the Torah, this meaning. Then, please God, each and every one will find their happiness. And the Simcha Sachayim. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Rabbi Barber. Tremendous hatzlacha. Yarech Yamam Amlachtecha for long, healthy years.
Thank you very much.
To be able to do this. And we'll go right away to the beginning, to the start of the new Sefer, Sefer Hafla. We're going to open a new Sefer. And with Hashem's help, we'll ask the moderator to put on the first halacha. We'll read it. The Rambam starts, Nidveis Pidatzena Hashem. Please, the words that come forth from my mouth, that you should be desired before you, Mashmatech Alamdeni, and please teach us your mitzvahs. And we'll open with the very first halacha in Hilchos Shavuos, the Rambam, as he codifies things for us, and he organizes all of halacha for us. This first chapter is such an incredible example of that. Rambam says, Arba Mina Shavuos, and there are 4 types of ways that we express an expression of promise. There's Shavuos Bitoy, Shavuos Shav, Shavuos Apikadon, and Shavuos Ha'edus. We say we're going to do something. We say something which is a Shavuah, which is for naught, in vain. We deny owing something, or when it comes to taking an oath in court. You express yourself and you say, I will do something or I won't do something. And it's really divided into 4 parts. Either in the Pashtayim Lahaba, Pashtayim Lav, or either I will do something or I won't do something. For instance, I did or I didn't, or I will or I won't. Either I will do something or I won't do something, or I did something or I did not do something. Yashakayach, thank you very, very much, everybody. Let us conclude this Sefer with as much chayis. It's a short Sefer. It's a rather straightforward and easy Sefer for us to realize. At the conclusion of Sefer Haflah. Thank you very much.